Welcome to the Wall Street Coach podcast. This is my first Restream live podcast with the one and only legend, Ricky Analog. Welcome to my podcast.
Thanks for having me, Kim Ann.
So good to have you here. I had Ricky, you were on my podcast with Benito, I want to say 2.5, 3 years ago. So this is my first time just getting you solo and very happy you're here.
Yeah, it's crazy how time flies like that.
It flies. I think is it 3 years that we know each other?
Yeah, it's got to be going on that for sure.
That's crazy. It's just crazy. We got to meet for the first time in person last year's Traders for a Cause event. And are you going to Traders for a Cause, by the way?
So unfortunately, I'm at a wedding in the Midwest that same week. I was really bummed to find out because usually it's in October, and I'm always like, okay, let's go. And then this year it's in November. So, but I think you're going, right?
I am going.
That's awesome.
Yeah. But I was excited to see you again because we got to share the stage before with those panels, and that was just so much fun to be up there with you.
It's always such a great event.
It really is. It really is. So I want to give you guys the formal bio of this man who is just an extraordinary human being, never mind an excellent trader. Ricky has been a full-time trader with over a decade of experience that trades everything. He trades everything from small caps to blue chips. His main focus is always on risk first and reward second. He fully understands that this is a marathon and not a sprint, which I don't think all traders do pay attention to. He has worked with hundreds of traders and has personally helped many struggling traders find a path to consistency and profitability. He is currently a moderator at TrueTrader.net, a community of like-minded traders focusing on exploiting the opening hour of the trading session. He is also a father of 3, and he can regularly be found on Twitter at Ricky Analog, reminding traders always to not lose sight of all they have to be grateful for. And when Ricky and I were talking about the title of this interview, that was what he wanted to really focus on. So let's just start there. What informs the importance of gratitude and how you operate as a trader and just as a man?
Well, I mean, right off the top of the head, the even what we just said 5 minutes ago about how time flies, right? One of the things I've really noticed with having kids is that when you don't take time for gratitude and step back and count your blessings, time seems to go even faster. I feel like when you're grateful, you're more in the moment and able to, you just get to make things seem like they last longer. Obviously, a minute's still 60 seconds, an hour still 60 minutes. And life flies no matter what. It's a really short time that we're given on this earth. And, people get caught up in the minutia. So I think traders are a really great example for this because we are blessed to do something that to most would seem really silly to make a decent living, right? Depending on like what your goals are and stuff, there's really no ceiling. And to an outsider looking in, you're just pushing buttons, right? Yeah. But we get caught up in the dumbest stuff where we go and we make everything really big. And then the ability to be grateful and see things for how insignificant they really are allows us to, move on quicker from the struggle, find happiness when sometimes maybe you think you should be down and not having a great day. I would be remiss to not bring up like what we're literally seeing unfold in front of us right now with the Middle East. Like there's not a single problem that a trader has right now that is even comparable to what many other people are experiencing in this world.
Yeah.
And so I work with a lot of traders. And I see people, unfortunately, the majority of people, when they reach out to you, it's because they're going through a struggle. They don't reach out to tell you how great everything's going.
Yeah.
So I deal with it on a pretty consistent basis. And a lot of the times, that's usually my first advice is to just focus on gratitude and then try to recenter yourself.
Yeah. Would you be willing to share when you yourself got connected to the importance of it?
Um, I do a lot of, I don't want to call it self-help, but like I'm always reading, I'm always trying to just like improve who I am as a person. So like when you do a lot of that kind of work, you read a lot of good authors who constantly harp on the importance of it. And if you hear a lot of people that are really successful, great people, and they keep seeming to say the same thing, maybe there's a bit of truth to it, right?
Yeah.
And a great friend of ours, I know you met him as well at Traders for a Cause, but Joe Fahmy, you know, he gave a speech one year at Traders for a Cause where he's like, dude, I've never met somebody that was successful that wasn't also a grateful person and didn't have like a positive attitude. And he's like, it's impossible to be upset and grateful at the same time. And that to me was so powerful because it's so true. Like you could be going through the most effed up stuff in the whole world, and you take 5 minutes to like go through a checklist of all the things you could be grateful for. And all of a sudden you just feel like weight lifted off your shoulders.
So true. So true. Wow. That's so great that he gave that talk. I'm kind of curious to hear it. I kind of want to try to go access it someplace.
You probably can. They have all the talks on Project Impact's website. I think it's like a donation that goes to the cancer research, but I believe it was the year before the one you were at, which I believe was just last year, so maybe 2 years ago.
Yeah.
Joe's there. Joe's a staple. He's there every year.
That's good. I'm glad he'll be there again. Hi, Sanket. We have Sanket joining us. He is somebody who's a regular in my YouTube live, so I'm glad you're here. Please let us know if you have a question. I'll probably do a lot of interviewing of Ricky first, but the second half will take questions for sure. So put them up here and I'll come back to them. Ricky, just with regards to all of the traders that you've helped over the years, we talked a little bit too about just some of the standard challenges that you see them face. What is the most predominant challenge they seem to be up against?
There's a lot, right? There are a lot that just, you can call them demons, right? This particular demon seems to rear its head all the time. But the one that like really always irritates me, because it's very hard for somebody that's a mentor in a position that I'm in to help somebody fix, because it really comes down to them. And that is, they just continuously do the exact same thing that they know doesn't work. Like they've been doing it, they realize when they do it, and it's usually an emotional reaction to something. And as soon as they do it, they have that instant feeling of, I did it again. And a lot of times, they probably know that they should take that position off or somehow, get themselves out of that situation, but they just go through, they say, let's just see how the dice fall. And, there's a reason that doing what they're doing doesn't work, but there's only so many times as a mentor you can say, hey, look, okay, I notice you keep doing this over and over. Like you need to make it a rule. It needs to be something that you just quit doing.
Yeah.
You'll see some of them like really just can put the effort in and get discipline, but a lot of them might go a week, 2 weeks where they cut it out, and then it just, like we said, rears its ugly head again. And it just comes, I guess the stem of that problem is discipline, right? It's like, and this feeling of having to make this one trade work. I see it all the time. Like if you look at how many trades you take over the course of a year, you'd be like stupid to think that any single trade should make or break you. Yet when you get blinders on and you're super focused on the microscopic, that trade seems like life or death. Yeah. And you fight it, and you end up taking a loss that was way bigger than you should have, and that it was preventable, but it came down to discipline. And when I work with people, one of the things I'm always trying to impart on them is like, discipline starts outside of your job. It's your personal habits. It's, can you like wake up at the first alarm bell, or do you hit snooze? Like, can you eat consistently healthy, or do you freaking swerve off the highway when you see a Taco Bell sign? It's just that simple. And those small, simple steps repeated over and over and over manifest themselves outside into all the other, they bleed over into the rest of your life.
Yeah. Do you feel that there should almost be a checklist that a person who's considering being a trader should take to be, we know that there's no real bar of entry. There are certain bars that show up, but in a lot of ways, anybody could be a trader. So do you think that there should be like a self quiz to see, am I built to be a trader?
You know what? It's funny because if there was, I still think it wouldn't matter because most people don't know who they really are until they start trading. Like trading reveals a lot about who you are. And so a lot of times we have to learn about ourselves, then make adjustments and correct course.
Yeah. Are you willing to share over this decade of working as a trader, especially in the beginning, what was it that you started to learn about you?
There's obviously been a million things, and I'm still a work in progress. One of the bigger things I remember that maybe year 3 or 4, when you start finding some sort of consistency and what might resemble success, until maybe here's the funniest thing I've noticed about life in general is that like whatever it is you do, like I use sports or skateboarding when I was younger as a good analogy, and that is like you always think like where you're currently at is like somehow super far advanced until you've been at it for another year or two and look back at where you were and go, man, I was naive, right? And it's the same as in trading. So like year 3 or 4, yeah, you find some consistency, maybe not everybody does. And so please don't ever measure yourself by anybody else's bar, right? But whether you're in year 3 or 4, 7 or 8, or whatever it is, and you start to find what you think is consistency and success, always remember and stay humbled that like, a few years from now, you could look back at the trader you are today and be mind boggled that you were even thinking such silly thoughts, right? So I think one of the bigger ones for me was realizing I had a problem with thinking that I was smarter than the market sometimes, and having this, I guess what it was stemming from was the outcome of a trade somehow validating or invalidating your self-worth, and taking really big losses and then somehow letting that snowball into, okay, now I'm depressed and now I'm going to self-sabotage by being unhealthy, whether that was like, drinking or not going to the gym, or being like, you know what, I was going to have a really healthy dinner tonight, but I feel like shit, we're going to go eat McDonald's, right? So it's like, and it all came from the fact that a trade didn't work. When you realize like, I don't have like a super high win rate, right? Like I'm not right 80% of the time, nor do I want to be. And knowing that, if you know you're going to be wrong that often, how are you going to let being wrong about a trade make you as a person, less valuable?
Yeah, it's beautiful. I'm so glad you spoke to that, because I do see that often is how much that sense of self-esteem is tied to that day-to-day experience as a trader, which feels like such a setup for depression and frustration and low self-esteem.
Well, and not only that, but think about, so there's always the aftermath, right? Where you're like, oh, I effed this trade up and now I feel like shit. What about while you're in the trade, knowing that if you eat the big loss, that it's going to make you feel like a failure and it causing you to exacerbate that problem, right? Like, geez. So you got to go into these things knowing like my self-worth isn't tied to the outcome of this trade. This trade could be the perfect setup. This could be A+ as it gets. And there's still a chance that it doesn't work. And that's nothing to do with you. The market is the market. It's going to do whatever the hell it's going to do. We're playing a game of probabilities. And like even a 90% probability, you're going to be wrong 1 in 10. So get used to it.
Absolutely. Do you feel that there is this, like, just for your own journey, I'm kind of curious. So that shows up a few years into you. How do you think when it showed up, you were able to start to pivot and not find that those losses defined your self-esteem? What did you lean into or begin to practice that facilitated you disconnecting your sense of identity with those losses?
The real answer for me, and obviously I think it could be different for everybody out there when they have to go on that journey themselves. For me, it was drilling down into data and like systematizing everything, because once I did that, I literally knew, like, I could see that, hey, look, here's a system. I could trade this system and it's going to be wrong, you know, almost 6 out of 10 times, like 60% of the time it's going to be wrong. But if you stick to it and let your winners go to the targets that they should go to, and you cut your losses where you know you should, it's profitable and it's doable. And you just, it really boiled down to the discipline. But the solution that came from it, or the strength in doing that, was that it removed me from the equation. Like, it's not me, it's a system. I'm just the monkey pushing the button. So, and when you allow yourself to do that, I mean, if Homer Simpson is working at the nuclear facility and the facility burns down, he doesn't get upset about his own self-worth. He was doing his, I'm just a monkey pushing the button.
Yep. What do you feel you see as a challenge? We talked about kind of beginners. What do you see as a challenge for sophisticated traders?
Honestly, like, they're almost, a lot of times they're almost the same challenges, just kind of showing up in slightly different manners. Like the whole, like, thinking you're smarter than the market thing, the more you've traded and the more you learn about, like, I mean, eventually, you know, you stumble across every indicator out there, every idea possible. You start listening, like, you might be a technical trader and you start listening to macro guys. You might be a macro guy and start worrying, like, I wonder what the day traders are doing, right? And you start seeing, you add to your tool belt, and you just keep compiling all these different tools. And eventually you're like, the wiser you get, the more you start thinking, like, no, I should be able to outsmart the market. And you always remember at the end of the day, like, look, the market can be very, very irrational. And, like, I'm trying to pick my spots, choose my battles, and remember, like, just check your ego at the door. And that has not, I mean, we do things all the time to, like, combat that, but that is not something that ever goes away. Like, your ego is just part of who you are. And you just learn to live with it. I think one of the things I learned from you that was super important was, the ability to, like, have these, like, out of body experiences where you just witness yourself experiencing an emotion. And, like you said, right, saying that's interesting, and letting that path of questioning kind of guide you. Because I do it all the time now, where I'm like, all right, like, I'm feeling this, and I'm like, regardless of what happens with this trade might work, it might not work, but, like, let's step back right now and let's just look at how I'm feeling right now, and ask some questions. So those have been things that help me a lot.
Good. I'm really glad to hear that. Let's just talk about the journey you've had. Walk us through the kind of trader you started out as, and how you kind of found yourself to be the trader that you are today. Just for those traders who are listening, hey, Jasmine, glad you're here. For the traders who are listening, who perhaps want to, you know, understand how you evolved over time, and for the traders who maybe are kind of curious if there is a path they themselves can follow, just share a little bit about what it literally looked like, and also what perhaps you might do or wish you did a little different along the way.
Oh, that's easy. So I think probably my story is very similar to what a lot of people could relate to, in terms of, like, the way it started. And, you know, I started in 2012 during the first pot stock boom, towards, I think it was the end of 2012, like October-ish. And I didn't know anything, but I found Twitter, which, blessing and a curse.
Yeah, totally.
Like, at the same time, right? Like, it's, yeah, I realized, I was like, wow, there's people on here talking about these stocks and saying, like, oh, this is going to go to the moon. Like, and you instantly are introduced to the idea of FOMO. I don't think we had identified that was what it was yet.
Yeah,
but
totally.
in hindsight, that's definitely what it was. And so, you know, I started off just buying everything that everybody was pumping on Twitter, and, you know, probably lost 50% of our, like I was managing, I had a business partner at the time. We had a joint account, I had a personal account, and I had his personal account. So I had like 3 accounts. And I think the whole thing, like if you lumped it all together, got cut in half. And so, you know, one of the things I've always prided myself on is that like I like doing hard things just for the sake of doing hard shit. It's maybe a bit masochistic, I don't know, but like when I find something that I'm not good at right away, I'm instantly like really, really interested in it. I'm just like, I got to figure this out. So, and you know, there's that whole statistic, like 95% of traders fail.
Mhm.
Yeah, well, if you meet like the average Joe out there in the public, those are the guys that like, if they get knocked on the ground, they don't pick themselves back up and go try again. They're like, oh. So like, if you really want to, if you want to keep them as part of the sample size and like they're part of the statistics, then yeah, 95% of people fail. But I would say if you cut them out, that's 60% of people, right? So if you now you narrow it down to those people, those are the people that are resilient and can get knocked down and dust themselves off. You're looking at a much bigger percentage of that sample size that is possibly going to make it in this. It obviously boils down to a lot of other things, but you know, I was part of that sample size where it was like, I don't care, I'm going to figure this out. And the number one thing I did after that, well, a few. One was realizing you can't just listen to people on Twitter, because that was, in fact, had I done the opposite of what they were saying, I would have been rich. But so learning to not follow people, like to just be like, listen, like I'm going to figure this out on my own. And I don't need a shortcut. I don't need somebody on Twitter to tell me XYZ is going to the moon. That was like the number one thing. Number two was finding a group of people that were kind of similar to me, and then getting a group of them together that we could have accountability. And, you know, I found that. And once I found that, I also at this right around the same time found my first mentor. And that was another huge step, because if you can find a legitimate mentor, one that's not just trying to sell you a pipe dream, one that's not, you know, I'm not here to drop names. I'm not going to bash anybody, but there are some really, really good people out there who are very knowledgeable. And if you can weed out the shit and find the gold, there's guys out there that can take you under their wing. Yeah, it costs money, but guess what? If you let people in for free, you get what you pay for. You're literally just getting all the riffraff, the people that chase the shiny objects. But finding a mentor was like probably the number one thing that was able to turn my trajectory around, because you got to find a way to shortcut all the losses. You got to find somebody that is going to teach you how to manage risk. That's always, and that's why I'm so adamant about that, is it doesn't matter how good of a trader you think you are. There's going to be situations you're faced with where if you don't have rock solid bulletproof risk management, you're toast. I've seen it time and time again. I've seen so many guys that can go from, you know, $25,000 to, we're talking 7 figures, and sometimes not even a small 7 figures. Sometimes, you know, $4, $5, $6 million. And within the next fiscal year, they're looking for a job. They're literally like, they've blown it all up, and it's disgusting almost, because you're like, whew, you know, I don't ever want to know what it feels like to lose that amount of money. And the only way that you can guarantee to not have that kind of horrific blow up is to have that kind of risk management.
And those that you did witness this happen to, do you attribute it to just their lack of risk management?
That and their lack of ability to do the hard thing when it counted. So this is like a really, it's tough, because it's one of those things that I guess maybe I'm lucky. For me, I'm always just like, well, I have a family, and like, you know, blowing up my account isn't even I don't have that option. It's not like if I draw down a certain amount and I'm looking at it going, you know, and this happens to people. They'll look at a loss that's so big that eventually they go, you know what, screw it. Like, it's so big. I mean, there's no coming back from this. So I might as well. And that is like the most dangerous thought you can have. So, but I'm not allowed to have that, because like I have people that literally count on me to, you know, be a risk manager first.
Yes.
And then, you know, again, maybe that prevents me from, you know, having these gigantic outlier days that you see some people on Twitter posting, right? Like, I've seen people have 7-figure days. Like, in one day, they're making 7 figs.
Yeah.
I'm not out here trying to act like I've had that. But at the same time, I'm also not blowing up, because I'm making my base hits. I'm responsible and accountable to my family.
Yep, totally. Do you feel that those were traders who had been in the game? Do you recall, were they in the game long enough to have known better?
Some, yeah. But a lot of them, I think maybe what you're hitting on here is probably correct, in that it would be like the possibility that some of these guys were just lucky enough to make fast money and not really have put in the time and effort to make it the right way so that they can keep it.
Yep, totally. So we have 5 minutes till the 35-hour mark. But part of what I'm realizing, Ricky, is that because I put this Twitter space out on Twitter space, I don't know that people will know to come into this live. So it could be that, just to make sure we don't alienate those 7 that have just, we had 22 sign up yesterday, but I put the wrong time, and now we have 7. So it could be just in the interest of honoring them, maybe I just can't post a Twitter space thing anymore, and I have to just post that this is a restream thing going forward. So maybe just to be kind to them, I just don't know how to click the Twitter space and keep this going. So Jasmine and Sandcat, because you guys were here first, if you guys have any questions before Ricky and I move over to the Twitter space, please feel free to ask them now. Here's another question, Ricky. Did you think when you first started trading that you would be here a decade later? Or did you not have that thought at all?
Yeah, honestly, I kind of think I did. And I mean, I don't know if it's even a question really, because I actually had, I did an interview a long time ago, maybe like 3 or 4 years ago. And one of the questions was like, did you ever think about throwing in the towel or quitting? And the answer I had to that made a good friend of mine now, who I didn't really know at the time, but he reached out to me. He's like, Ricky, when I heard that, he's like, that like spoke to me, because like, dude, that's how you know that this is something that you're going to be around for. And I told him, I said, of course I have these moments where I like have doubts and stuff, and maybe even like want to cry or scream, but it only lasts a moment, like maybe minutes. And then I remember like, no, like I'll figure this out. And
wow.
that so like I think that kind of was like almost the same question just asked from the other side of the coin, right? Like, I don't know if I knew I was going to be around this long, but I knew that I wasn't quitting.
Yeah, totally. Which is just, it's so profound. And what do you attribute that to? Your doggedness?
Maybe just this, just resiliency. Just this, dude, I'm like, there are definitely some things in life I suck at, but I'm like, I've always been really good at sports. I'm pretty book smart. Like, I always got really good grades. And so like a lot of stuff always came like naturally easy for me. Mm-hmm. So I feel like when something's hard, I gravitate towards it, because I'm just like, dude, I like the challenge. I like to push myself. Yeah. I'm a pretty big believer in that, like, true happiness comes from progress, which only can be done through challenging yourself. So if you're not pushing yourself and trying to become a better version of yourself than you were today, you'll feel stagnation, and then that leads to depression almost, right? So
for sure. You know, one of the things I say all the time is that trading is the best school of enlightenment out there. It's going to force you to look deep at so many of the shadows within yourself.
It definitely holds a big mirror up to you.
Doesn't it, right? It seems to. Do you feel that trading has made you a better man?
Yeah, big time. And I don't, so yes, definitely some things, right? Granted, at the same time, I've been on this journey. Many other things happen in life, right? Like I got married, I have kids, and like I would think that, trading definitely helped guide me in the right direction in certain aspects of my life, but definitely having kids and being married and all these things not only had very profound effect on my life, but also had a really profound effect on my trading. So, I mean, honestly, like I went through a phase where, I'm out on the East Coast now, but I was on the West Coast, and my kids would wake up at 6:30 in the morning for school, and they're young, so they're losing their mind, going loud and getting crazy. And the bell literally just rang, and I'm trying to trade and focus, and I've got a kid tugging on my arm, and my wife's like got one kid, and I'm like, and like there's been times when I just wanted to scream, and like, but at one point I remember one of my kids saying like, "Dad, I don't like when you trade. I don't like when you're working." And it tugged at my heart so bad, because I was like, damn, like I'm a father first, right? Like, and these kids are only going to be young for this short amount of time. And I don't ever want my kids to be like, I hate when my dad's working, or, my wife being like, it's not really, it doesn't make me feel good that you get short with me when I'm trying my best to get these kids ready for school in the morning, and like you're trying to work. And I'm like, that was a huge turning point for me, because that was part of that point in time in my career where I had to systematize everything, because one, I literally had to do it to save my relationship with my kids and my wife, because I had to be able to remove all the emotion. And the only way to remove the emotion as much as possible, because you can't get rid of all of it, but the only way to remove as much as possible was to legitimately systemize everything as much as I possibly could.
Wow. Amazing. That's amazing. All right. So we have a couple of questions here, but guys, we are going to have to go over to Twitter Space. I suspect to just be true to me putting it up and out there. But a couple of questions from Lloyd. I'm so glad you're here. He's listening to the stream while he's driving. So Lloyd, please go over to Twitter Space now. Hervey Trade says, do you share your daily profits and losses with your wife? There are times where knowing what I made her loss has an impact on my relationship.
So I don't. I used to, and like I realized that one, if you're in our business, then we can all talk about things and it makes sense to us. But people that aren't, sometimes it just seems silly to them. And what was funny was like it used to be like a daily thing, and then I was like, you know what? There's really no point in telling her what I made unless it was like an outlier day, and then that was even worse, because it was like, shit. One, if it was a big day, it was like, oh, like, so we should go spend a shit ton of money now. Like, no. If it was really bad, I was like, oh, like she's gonna like, yeah, like maybe he shouldn't be working. So honestly, it's come to the point now where I don't. If she asks, I'm always transparent. Like I'll, and what's funny is I don't ever post P&L stuff on Twitter. Like to me, it's kind of, honestly, it's no one else's business. And one of the things my mentor always told me is like, listen, the only people that really freaking matter in your life are your wife and your kids and maybe your immediate family. And, you want to share your P&L, share it with them, but there's no reason to share it outside of that. And I've always found that to be pretty good advice for me personally, because you get caught. Like I see people that start posting P&L and it becomes an ego thing. And I'm not in this to have an ego. In fact, I want to do everything in my power to stay away from anything that's an activity that's going to trigger my ego. And P&L posting is like, dude, look at how many people you see post P&L on Twitter, and they start doing it like where they're trying to show transparency and they want to do it consistently every day. And then they hit a rough patch and then they're posting these big negative P&Ls. And dude, I don't give a shit about Twitter, but I care about that person not realizing that in the back of his head while he's trading is actually affecting his actual trade. And I'm like, dude, you got to stop posting that because you're worried about what everyone else is going to think.
Yep, I 100% agree with you. All right, we'll go to Twitter Space now, but please, anybody listening here, we have 10 people here. I know this may seem strange, guys, but because I set up that space, I'm concerned that those who are waiting for the space aren't hearing this, although you would think they would be. But again, all these platforms, it's hard to keep track. Ricky, I'll meet you over at the Twitter Space, and we'll have part 2 finish up there. So I'm going to end this here.
Thanks everybody that listened to this one. And if you guys are in here or watching this, check out Kim Ann Curtains. She has a Discord. I always, is it a Trader Heroes journey? Okay. Yeah. And listen, guys, Kim, please tell them your website and stuff, because I don't want to get it wrong, but I want them to hear it from you because you're a wealth of knowledge.
The Wall Street Coach, and they're all on my YouTube channel right now, it seems. So they know where to find me. They want to know where to find you, but they know probably with Ricky Analog, his handle is right there in the screen.
You can find me at the golf course, guys.
And on Twitter just a little bit. All right, we're going to end this now, and I'll see you over at the space.
All right.